What's up, everybody? Ryan and I are very excited today because we have a very special guest. He's a pioneer in the beer industry, spending 32 years at Miller Coors, where he created Blue Moon, among many other things. Now he's looking to be a pioneer in the cannabis industry, brewing beer with cannabis. In fact, his book comes out, Brewing Beer with Cannabis, using THC and CBD in beer, August 1st. Our guest is Dr. Keith Villa. How you doing, doctor?
Doing fine, Bill. Yeah, thanks for having me on this show. And Ryan, nice to talk today. Hopefully we can have some fun for your viewers.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're really excited to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time to be on here. And you know, we're really excited to talk about the book that you're writing. It comes out August 1st. So the title of the book is Brewing with Cannabis, correct?
Using THC and CBD in beer.
Sorry, I had to find my notes there. But anyways, Brewing with Cannabis using THC and CBD. That's a book that, how long did it take you to write, and what was your motivation behind writing the book?
So it took about a year to get all the data together and write the book and go through all the reviews, technical review, copyright editing, all that stuff. So about a year. And then the book itself was written because there's been this huge need for knowledge about cannabis, and in particular, how to put cannabis into beverages, not just beer, but your morning tea, coffee, water, seltzer, how to get it in there. Because brewers are very innovative, and there are over 8,000 breweries in the United States as of today. And they're always looking for the next big thing. I just happen to be a few steps ahead of them. So because I launched Saria back in 2018. So we've got 3 years of experience doing this. And so I thought I'd put together a kind of a roadmap, if you will, on how to go about growing the plants, harvesting, activating the THC or CBD, and then making it water soluble to put into beverages such as beer.
So are there other books out there like this, or is yours essentially going to be the Brewing with Cannabis Bible, the one that as this Brewing with Cannabis starts to take over and starts to speed up and kind of expand? Is this going to be the book that people look back on? I remember when I got into home brewing, I think it was the Home Brewer's Bible or the Home Brewer's Handbook was the first book I read. Is this going to be the one that people pass around? They're going to have a broken down copy that they hand over generation to generation?
Probably, yeah. They can even take pages out and use those as rolling papers. But, yeah, I think they will, because the last book written on this subject was in 1996. And back then they didn't know a lot about brewing because they had, in that book, there were several recipes, probably maybe 10 recipes, but they were all extract based. So, you buy a can of this extract and you mix it with water and then you put in buds and all this. And so it was very, very basic, again, because back then, 25 to 30 years ago, the knowledge wasn't as, I guess, in depth as it is in today's world. So in this book, I really go into some of the science of, the plant itself, how to grow it where legal, how to harvest the buds, and then how to take care of them and activate them. Because one thing a lot of people don't realize is CBD and THC are in the plant, the cannabis plant, but they're in there in a non-active form. You have to activate the cannabinoids to actually do something in your body. And to do that, you need heat. So I go in depth on how to do that. And so yeah, there's a lot of useful information in this book. Basic information that I think people will look at and realize that, it's not easy to do this, but once you have the basics down pat, then you can do quite a bit of things, just like brewing. Once you know how to brew with grains, then it opens up the whole world to you, because you can make any type of beer. Whereas if you stick with extract brewing, you're limited by what cans of extract are available in a homebrew shop.
So you mentioned growing cannabis is described in your book. Now, having no experience growing cannabis, but having friends of friends who may have implied that it's very difficult to grow it the right way. Is that something that's true and something you address in the book, or is that just an urban legend here in the places that cannabis is a little frowned upon?
It is tough to grow the plant because a lot of insects really go and try to eat the plant, try to live in the plant, especially spider mites here in Colorado. So you do have to take care when you're growing it that you don't get these type of infestations. But the more important part is you have to keep the plant. And one thing that is very similar between the beer world and the cannabis world is that you want the female plant. You don't want the male plant. So the female is the one that makes the great stuff. In the brewing world, it's the female plant that makes the hops. In the cannabis world, it's the female plant that makes the buds that have all the cannabis in them, the cannabinoids. And so once the female plant becomes fertilized by a male, then that plant starts making seeds instead of high quality buds or high quality cones. So keep the male plants out of there and just keep it really, really strict, isolated, and away from any pollen.
Yeah, I heard that it was very similar with hops, that if female and male hops, I guess, interact, that they would shut down the whole hops crop. So it sounds like the same thing, because hops and cannabis, they're cousins or distant cousins or something along those lines.
Exactly. Yeah, they're always often referred to as cousins, and the main reason is because they belong in the same family of plants, scientific family called Cannabaceae. And in that family, there are about, I think it's 12 different isolated genuses of plants. And the two that we're interested in are the cannabis strains and the humulus, that's the hops. So they are in the same family. So because of that, a lot of people refer to them as cousins. More so than that is that you can actually cut a branch off a hop plant and graft it onto a cannabis plant and it'll grow. Vice versa, if you get a cannabis branch and put it on a hop plant and graft it on, it'll grow and make cannabis buds on that branch.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, officer. That is a hop plant. I don't know how
So, I don't know how that happened.
in your book, do you discuss any of the challenges that come with brewing with cannabis? I would expect it to be similar, but yet very different than, you know, brewing regular beer, or is it follow the very similar path when you're making cannabis beer?
You hit the nail on the head. There are a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences. So the typical home brewer, I think, can read the book and get through it very quickly and figure out, wow, lots of things are similar. For example, we just talked about the fact that you need heat to activate the cannabinoids, THC and CBD. In the same way, hops, you have to boil the hops because the alpha acids that eventually become the bitter taste from the hops, they're not bitter until you boil them with heat. And so there's a lot of similar steps between working with cannabis and working with hops. So yeah, lots of similarities, lots of differences. I think there are some of the main differences are it is illegal to put cannabis and alcohol in the same product and offer it for sale here in the United States. So first thing people have to realize if they want to do this is they have to figure out how to make great tasting non-alcoholic beers. That's one thing. And then when you get into a lot of the minutia, like labeling, there's so many label issues you have to work against. Sales, all kinds of sales tactics you cannot do in the cannabis side. And even growing, you can grow a hop plant anywhere, but with cannabis, you know, it's illegal federally. So you have to be very careful. And even those states where you can grow cannabis plants like Colorado or Oregon. Oregon, I mean, is seen as a real progressive liberal state. However, when it comes to cannabis, if you get caught growing plants within, I think it's 1,000 feet of a schoolyard, you can be fined up to $375,000, and you potentially can be sent to jail for, I believe it's up to 20 years. So there's some very serious penalties, even in the states where it's legal. So you have to be aware of all of those issues before you get into this. And I address that right at the front of the book. It's like, this is federally illegal. And even though the states that have legalized recreational cannabis still have very strict laws to make sure you follow exactly what can and what cannot be done.
And now that you bring that up, that was one of our questions. And further than that, I wanted to know, how do you feel? Do you think alcohol, I know it's illegal, and weed go together in a drink, or do you think we should keep them separate?
I definitely keep them separate because we don't know a lot about the interactions of cannabis and everyday compounds. Cannabis and caffeine from your coffee, cannabis and cold medicine when you have a cold, cannabis and prescription drugs. There's not a lot known because it's been federally illegal, and because of that, there haven't been a lot of studies, especially by universities, to really get in and study what's happening with the cannabinoids and the human body. And if we look back in beer history, one thing we see is that in the 1990s and the 2000s, we saw the advent of beers with caffeine, like Four Loko and these type of drinks. And these things, they allowed college students to stay up all night partying without getting sleepy. However, the drawback was that people didn't realize that alcohol and caffeine at the same time, you have an upper and a downer on the body. And so you had people getting sick to the point where some people were on the verge of death, and just all kinds of bad things. And so the FDA had to issue a warning letter asking, or actually telling brewers to take these things off the shelf because they were posing danger. So yeah, so a lot of unknowns with cannabis. That's why I don't think we'll see the advent of cannabis and alcohol together in the same drink anytime soon.
So a quick question about those two not going together in the can. Right now, when you go to purchase your THC beer, you can only get it at a dispensary, correct? You can't go to, like in Maryland, we have liquor stores. We call them liquor stores where they have beer and liquor. Some states keep liquor and beer separate. And in Colorado, I guess, THC beer and alcohol beer are not even sold in the same location, correct?
Correct. Yeah. We do make our beer with and without cannabis infusion. So the non-alcoholic beer we make without cannabis is available in liquor stores and any place you find beer. But with cannabis, it's only available in dispensaries. And when you look at the two labels, they are very, very different. Here, I'll show you real quick. So if you were able to go into a dispensary in Colorado, you would see this. It's a Seria Belgian white label. You'll see the THC warning. You'll see all kinds of issues here that indicate it has THC. And then if you go into a liquor store and buy, or a grocery store and buy our non-infused, you'll see that the color pattern is different. It's not dark blue. The logo's a little bit bigger. There aren't any warnings about alcohol or cannabis on this. And then with the dispensary product, there's a child-resistant end. So child-resistant just generally means that somebody 5 years old and younger cannot figure out how to open it up. So they've got these weird ends that make it difficult. So if you see a package with all the warnings with a weird end, you know that it's probably a cannabis beer, and it's so highly regulated that I don't think you'll ever, in fact, you won't find it accidentally for sale in a liquor store, because again, the laws are very, very strict. So the suppliers, the distributors, and the dispensaries will get in trouble if they lose track of even one can of our beer. It's very, very tightly controlled.
Do you ever see them coming together? Do you ever see alcohol and THC finally one day being sold side by side in the same stores? Or do you think it's right now in the long, 10 years out, we're still going to have them separate just because, the fear of someone consuming THC, not realizing they're buying THC beer, even though it's clearly labeled? You know?
Yeah, I think we're going to see that separation because, yeah, it's going to cause confusion to consumers. And also, I think if we look north to Canada, where they made it federally legal, they put in place a bunch of rules to follow, such as you cannot make beverages in the same plant to make alcoholic beverages. So you can't take like a Budweiser plant or a Labatt's plant where they make beer and then all of a sudden make cannabis beer. In addition to that, rules up there say that you cannot use alcoholic logos or branding cannabis world. So you can't all of a sudden have Coors Light now with cannabis or Bud Light now with buds. You can't do that up there. And I think the US government will probably follow the same lead and say, okay, yeah, it makes sense to avoid consumer confusion. You cannot produce these things in the same alcoholic plant, and you can't use logos and brand names from the alcoholic world in the cannabis world.
All right. We've been talking a lot about laws, and I had something that came to me when I read about you implementing the orange slices, which kind of was the reason Blue Moon took off. They weren't really serving it correctly, and you got in there and you were slicing up oranges, just showing how to slice them up. So the question is, and people should read about you, it's pretty fascinating. Are you out there in these states where it's not legal, pushing legalization, and can you come to Pennsylvania to do that?
And Maryland.
Yeah,
Are you involved in Congress? Are you calling congressmen? Are you writing letters and meeting people and things like that?
Yeah, we support legalization, federal legalization, but not, I would say, not willy-nilly so that everybody can just have at it. There has to be a certain set of regulations with cannabis, just like in alcohol. You have to be over 21 unless there is a medical reason, because obviously with CBD, it's been shown that CBD, certain extracts can be used to successfully treat seizures in children. And there are several drugs, the main one being Epidiolex, which is a CBD extract, and it's been proven to treat children with severe seizures. And so there is a medical use for cannabis, at least one, probably many more. So our company, and personally, I support federal legalization for that aspect, but also for the fact that universities will then be able to study cannabis. That is, right now they don't do it because it's federally illegal. They'll lose their federal funding, which is millions of dollars. And no university wants to do that. But when it becomes federally legal, they'll be able to study the plant and figure out what compounds in the plant can help people. And of course, universities, as much as I like universities, they're in it for the money too, just like big companies. They'll find certain aspects of the plant that they can patent and then sell that intellectual property and make money for the university. Things like there are compounds called cannabinoids in cannabis. The most famous is THC. Next after that is CBD, but there are over 100 of them. And most people don't know what these things do. They do something in the body, but some people make guesses like, well, there's some that act like Viagra. There are some that give you energy like caffeine. But you know that the universities will find these, identify them, patent them, and then sell that technology.
Yes, because for those of our viewers that don't know, you have one of my favorite degrees, a doctorate in brewing and fermentation from the University of Brussels in Belgium. And basically, if it was prohibition when you were trying to get that degree, you wouldn't be able to get it, right? So there is no equivalent now to that. Nobody can get a doctorate in weed, is what you're saying, in cannabis.
Right, which is really unfortunate because when the plant was made illegal back in the 1930s, really through a campaign of kind of racism, and it wasn't science-based.
Money had to be involved too, probably, right?
It was money, yeah, money, racism, and it was just it's unfortunate that the plant was grouped into more very serious narcotic drugs like opium and cocaine and these things, where cannabis is not as dangerous as everybody portrayed it to be.
Do you find that that stigma that kind of goes with marijuana, do you run into that when you are talking to people that may be not familiar with what you're doing with the cannabis industry? I mean, is that something you run into a lot? And when Bill and I were talking earlier, we were wondering if there's people that are like that just won't try your product because it has marijuana in it and that stigma. It's kind of like a little.
Yeah, they're mainly with older people. Younger people, I think, are definitely more open to cannabis, and the fact that what we hear from younger people, and I'm talking 21 to about 25, 29. A lot of them are no longer drinking alcohol because they view alcohol as something that's very bad for the body, a toxin or a poison, if you will. And they're at the point where health and wellness is really front and center, and they want to make sure they treat their body as good as they can. And so a lot of them really drink alcohol sparingly. They don't use it very much. They prefer cannabis. And but yes, there are some older people who say, well, you know, that's a drug. I'm not going to take a drug. However, once they read about it and get educated, they find out that CBD and THC, yes, they're drugs, but so is caffeine in your morning cup of coffee. That's a drug, and you use it responsibly. You can use THC and CBD responsibly to help you to sleep. Maybe you had a really rough day and you're stressed out, and you don't want alcohol because alcohol can hurt your sleep patterns. But maybe you read an article about CBD helping you to sleep, and it can help you. So people, I think, once they do that and realize that these things can be used to help certain conditions, I think that's when they switch and they say they go from being a antagonist to actually coming on our side and saying, you know, this is something that can really help.
I know one of the big reasons you wrote the book is because there has to be a better alternative than smoking. I think a lot of people share that sentiment, and I really think, and you might agree with this, that the gateway to these gateway drink to the older crowd is going to be this: hey, it's a beer, it's a wine. I've seen it happen. I saw it happen with a seltzer a couple weekends ago. Somebody who had never tried it went, it's a seltzer, and they drank it because they've never smoked anything in their life, right? But they'll drink it. They probably won't eat a cookie, but I think they'll drink it because it's wine or beer, right?
Oh yeah. Because I think our Western society is really formed around socializing with beverages, and it's just part of our culture. Whether you go to a retirement party or a wedding, you toast with a glass of champagne or beer or wine, something in your hand. You toast. You don't hold up a gummy and say cheers. You toast with a beverage. And since it's part of our culture, it's just us as we grow up here in the United States that a beverage is something that can really we can relate to, and if it tastes good, we drink it. If it tastes bad, obviously we won't drink it. But yeah, beverages are part of our society.
Murphy, got anything? I got
When you were writing the book, was there one chapter that you wrote that you enjoyed more than others? Like one that, even if people aren't into cannabis or brewing, or they're into one and not the other, is there something that if they got your book, you would really want them to read or check out because it was something that you really enjoyed writing about and you feel like maybe it could open them up to one side or the other or both?
For me, it was the very first chapter because that deals with how cannabis became illegal in the United States and prohibited. And in there, it's interesting because growing up, with the war on drugs and everything, I was always told to just say no to drugs and all that. The campaigns that have kind of come and gone, but and the reason that people always said say no to cannabis was they said, well, it's highly addictive, it'll lead to bad things and all this other stuff. And when you do the research, you find out, no, it's not that bad. There's no science behind that proving that it is addictive. Yes, there are some people who do get addicted to it, but not more than other compounds such as caffeine or alcohol. And it's interesting because in the first chapter I talk about that, about the history of it and how it became illegal. And I touch on some of the other aspects of how the plant was useful. For example, a lot of people don't realize that in the 1940s, actually 1941, Henry Ford made one of the very first car bodies out of bioplastics, which utilized hemp. And there's a picture in there of the car from 1941. Some people refer to it as the hemp car. Some people refer to it as the soybean car, because Ford used a mixture of hemp and soybeans and a couple other plants to come up with bioplastic, which was very durable, sturdy. He would say, back in 1941, they would say that it was as durable as steel. I think they were probably exaggerating, but bioplastic, given today's scientific know-how, I think you could take the hemp plant and make some really fantastic auto bodies and all.
Go, Elon Musk. Make some hemp stuff.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Porsche, I think it was last year, Porsche actually made a Formula One race car body out of bioplastics, which included hemp. And when you think of the last time that happened in 1941, it really shows you that we could be living in a whole different world if this plant was legalized or legal versus being made prohibited. But yeah, chapter 1, to answer your question.
All right,
Chapter 1.
Short story long.
Right in the beginning, it's easy.
Yeah, chapter 1 I think was fun because it really opened my eyes as to all of that stuff. And it's like, wow, I was wrong to believe all that all these years. And now here we are on the verge of legalizing it here in our country. Just like alcohol, when it was prohibited from, was it the 18th Amendment in 1919, it was illegal until 1933. And people found out that, that didn't quite work because people on the borders, like up near Canada, they'd go to Canada to get a drink. Or people who lived in Southern California would drive into Mexico to get a drink, for the weekend. And, or they would just make it illegally in their house, in a bathtub or whatever. And prohibition proved to be a failure, prohibition of alcohol. And it was rescinded in 1933. And cannabis also is proving itself to be a failure because people are consuming cannabis, whether it's for medical reasons or for recreational reasons. They're consuming it. And in that respect, there are a lot of people who are in jail, serving jail time for breaking the law for having as little as a little joint of cannabis. So it's just very different to look at that whole picture and think how life could be different for us here in the United States.
Yeah. So you have two. I don't know if this is your first book, but obviously you have two titles professionally: brewer and author. Which is harder?
Well, for me, author, because I've been a brewmaster for so many years, and I've studied. I have a PhD in brewing. There's only I'm one of a handful of people in the world that has a PhD in brewing from the University of Brussels. Whereas being an author that's I realized it's really hard. You have to.
Well, I hear.
You write the manuscript, and then you go through all these reviews to correct the grammar, the clarity of the message, the technical aspects, the legal aspects. It's just tough enough writing a book, and then after that, getting it into the final format is really tough. That's why you need a really good publisher. And luckily, I worked with the Brewers Publications group up in Boulder. That's an offshoot of the Brewers Association, which is the headquarters of craft brewing here in the United States. And so I was very fortunate to work with them and get through this. And yeah, it was a lot of work. Being an author, that's hard.
I figured you'd say that.
Was there anything that you wanted in the book that you didn't get to put in there? Anything get left on the editing floor?
I guess the main thing, not the editing floor, the main thing is that the world of cannabis is changing so rapidly, almost weekly. When I started writing the book, recreational cannabis was legal in 8 states. When I finished, and here it is for sale, we're up to, I think it's 18 or 19 states. So I mean, that's how fast things are changing. Within the course of a year, we've gone from 8 states to 19 states with legal recreational cannabis. And that was my hesitation about writing the book, is that things are changing so fast that by the time the book goes into print, it's part of it is out of date. And so luckily, in the book, I've got websites so that people can get up to speed and look up the latest information, such as the states where it's legal and illegal. And I have a lot of information that just is going to be almost timeless too. Things like how to extract the cannabinoids and make them water soluble and put them into your beverages. And I've got homebrew recipes too that will be, I think, timeless. Things like how to make I've got a chocolate peanut butter stout, a 1970s style lager. I've got just lots of cool recipes in there for homebrewed beers that people can make with or without cannabis. Those type of things I think are just timeless.
And looking at I guess, into the future, how long do you think it's going to take before, you're someone that has, I would say, inside knowledge, or at least you're very involved in the cannabis scene. So like, what are you and other people in your profession thinking that the timeline is going to look like where we get legal marijuana federally?
So what we're thinking, and I've talked to lobbyists on Capitol Hill, most are in agreement that we won't see it soon. That is by the 2022 legislative session, but there is a lot of support where we probably will see it by the 2024 legislative session. So the lobbyists I've spoken to say that the 2024 is probably that time point that we should look at for realistically anticipating federal legalization. And for me, that's great. It's just a couple, 3 years away, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But there's a lot to do between now and then for the states, and in particular those states that won't want legalization, because there's some states that are conservative and they'll probably pass on any kind of cannabis participation. Who knows? States like some of the southern states, or out west, conservative states like Utah, they may say no cannabis in this state. However, medical cannabis really surprised me, because there are states that I thought would never even pass legal medical cannabis laws, and now they have them, which is crazy. I never thought that would ever happen.
Right.
So yeah, so you never know with cannabis legalization. It's coming. I think by 2024. I agree with a lot of the lobbyists, and just talking to people. I mean, when you talk to people, it's more than 70% of Americans think that cannabis should be legalized federally in one way or another, whether it's rec, medical, whatever. And almost everybody believes it should be decriminalized.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, most people I know do.
I feel like it's going to come down to the government, seeing that here's an opportunity to get more tax income.
Oh, that's a huge driver I mean, follow the money with anything you can talk about. If you follow the money trail, that's where you'll actually figure out, what's going to happen. And with cannabis, there's a lot of money to be made in taxes, tax revenue for local and state governments and the federal government, because they make quite a bit of money on alcohol taxes. And with cannabis, they can make quite a bit of money there too. So there's money to be made. There are products to be made. Who knows? Once innovators get into it and it's legal, you might see all kinds of products pop up made with cannabis. Everything, not just from beverages and consumables, but new types of clothing, fibers, cars, bioplastics. you could even clone the genes for these cannabinoids, medical ones, into foods, so that you eventually can have vegetables, produce with certain helpful cannabinoids. Like maybe you want to have a snack at night of dried fruit, maybe dried apples or something. You can clone that gene into the apple plant and have CBD apples in there. And you just have a few of those and you can go to sleep at night. But of course, the future is just wide open. So that's why it's just, and that was one reason for writing the book, is really to give people just a platform to start with, because there really wasn't anything like it before, for people to say, oh, here's the basics of this category. Let's read it, and then from here, that's our starting point, and we're just going to figure out what we want to do. So I hope it does lead to a lot of new products, new discoveries, and just things to help our lives here in the States and worldwide too, because we're getting requests globally from people in South America, Europe, Asia, Australia, asking about the book and how they can get it. Even though it's illegal in those countries, they want to know as much as possible. And so I think globally, it can help. It can help humanity, because if we help each other, gosh, that's rather than fighting, it's going to be a good thing to get along and figure out new drugs to help people, new ways to make car bodies out of bioplastics instead of plastic, petroleum-based plastic. I mean, just good things for the environment. Just lots of positives. I'm an optimist, as you can probably see.
Well, by the time this people see this, the book will probably already be out. So where can people find it?
So people can get it online, either, I guess the easiest way is, if you want to keep supporting Jeff Bezos's trips
Send them up to space.
Amazon. Go to Amazon, and if you type up, Brewing with Cannabis, the book will pop up and you'll see it there. But it's available online at any place where they sell books, as well as stores, bookstores, and especially homebrew shops. They most likely will be carrying it. And a few dispensaries where you have dispensaries will also carry it. But online would be the easiest place to get it. And in fact, you can get it direct from the publisher, Brewers Publications. So if you just type in, do a Google search for Brewers Publications, you'll see it there too. And again, it's just a nice basic platform for learning about cannabis and all the basics. And if you want to get into the business, I talk about the sales and marketing too. What's allowed, what's legal, and what's not allowed in regards to labeling and sales tactics, because they're like sampling. You can sample, almost any state in the union will allow alcoholic sampling. If there's a new whiskey out or a new beer, you can go to a liquor store and there'll be a rep there, giving samples of a new whiskey or a new beer. You taste it and you say, ooh, that's good, I'll buy a bottle. But with cannabis, you cannot do that. So, and in the book, I talk about, what's allowed, what's not allowed.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to reading it. We'll make sure that we include all the links in the breakdown when we put it up on the different platforms. So that way people can just go right to it, click it and buy it. And hopefully we'll get some good feedback from people after they read it, and we can get some more Q&A sessions with you. And I don't know, Bill, do you have any other questions?
No, I'm going to get it. Not only chapter 1, I'm going to read the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to read the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And something tells me Bill's going to read it and turn into this cannabis entrepreneur, and he's going to be surrounded by all kinds of people.
The student is basically a teacher.
Hey, that was one question I had. Are there other, what are other, or who are other businesses that you really are getting behind or support or cheering for in the cannabis industry?
Wow, there's so many that are getting into it on the consumables side, but also on the medical side. There's just a lot of people who have experienced tragedies firsthand, whether it's kids with issues, brain issues, having seizures, and they get into it. There's one company here in Denver. This gentleman started a CBD company because his son had seizures, and he's starting to expand his products that was his whole reason for getting in, is because of his son who has seizures. So there's just so many facets to look at in this industry. It's hard to pick any single one, because everybody gets into it for a reason. There's obviously those people that get into it just for the money, because there's going to be money to be made for sure. But there are many more people getting into it for their own personal reasons. And a lot of those are having to do with having a family member who actually has benefited from the medical side of cannabis. And so those are usually the ones that I like to talk to and help support, because they go at it from a purely from the heart reason versus from the wallet reason. So it's but I think everybody's got their own reasons for getting into it on the business side, and it is a time. I think it's a unique point in time right now that any of us can keep our day jobs, but get into cannabis. And by the time it's federally legal, most of us, between now and 2024, if it happens in 2024, most of us have enough time to build a small cannabis business in the states where it's legal, and potentially sell it for, 10 million, 20, 30 million dollars. Because big companies in the future, when it's legal, they're going to scoop up the companies that are in it already, that are making or that have knowledge, because big companies want to jump in with a head start. They don't want to get in and all of a sudden have to figure out what to do. They're going to want to jump in when it's federally legal and just get that head start and get ahead of all their competitors. So if Bill starts a company making bioplastics,
I was going to get going, actually. Go start. I'm kidding.
it's like
you got me motivated. I'm like motivated. I got to get out of here and start my company now.
So first thing we'll do is put our houses for sale, and we're going out to a state that's where it's legal, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really is a unique point in time where people can potentially make a fortune by just starting a little business and getting scooped up by a pharmaceutical company or by a big clothing company or whatever. I mean, the world is really unique right now. It's a really unique point in time, because once it becomes federally legal, things are going to change. It's like a huge tidal wave that's coming towards us, and you could either hunker down and not be hurt by it, if you will, or you can actually immensely. And I hope one of your listeners, does get into it, and who knows, one of your listeners in the future may come back and say, man, I listened to your podcast, I did it, and here I am. By the way, I bought my own island, and I live out here in the Pacific, having fun, and it's.
I hope it's 30D Butler.
Yeah, that's
one of our followers. Oh man, sorry to cut you off.
No, I think it's great. I mean, I've always, when they did a medical marijuana, essentially like opening up the dispensaries here for that in Maryland, I wanted to be involved with it so much, but I knew people that were getting involved with it. I was working with them, but they ultimately didn't get picked because they only had a set number of license that they were giving out. So then I kind of fizzled, my excitement and everything. But I likened it to owning a liquor store when Prohibition ended. Imagine being able to say, "Hey, yeah, I just went to the liquor store the day after they legalized alcohol," and that's where kind of I feel like we're sitting.
That or raising the barley the brewers needed and whiskey producers needed to make mash out of and then to distill. I mean it spans everything from the raw materials side of growing the hemp plant or the barley, whatever it is, to making products or making the fertilizer to fertilize the plants. I mean, it's like you could get into any aspect of it and specialize. And then at that point, when it becomes federally legal, like I said, a lot of big companies are going to start scooping up any small business that has knowledge about what to do, a specialty knowledge in this category. And that's why, you too, you could have a side business with hemp, doing something, maybe making, finding a new way to make clothing out of hemp, or rope, maybe a really strong rope out of hemp that is useful for fighting fires, climbing up ropes or something. I mean, there's just so many possibilities. And like I said, it's an easy way to get in, have a business, and when it becomes federally legal, it's a roll of the dice, but you could easily make several $1 million or much, much more. So it's a unique point in time right now, once in a lifetime opportunity for a lot of people. I don't want to sound like a salesman, but it really is.
I mean, it's right. It's true. It's like when the internet first hit. These people got so rich now, a lot of it they did it wrong, but they started a company and boom, they had this immediate chance to be millionaires that hadn't existed really.
Exactly. Yeah. Who would have guessed that Google, search engine back when it started, it's like, I remember me thinking, why do I need to search the internet? There's nothing there. Why do I need
think of a reason. Bezos sold books. He sold books. Young people probably don't even know that. It was just Amazon was like, oh, I don't need books.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it started out as a
except for your book.
And Now Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world, and so that's why I'm saying with cannabis, it is. You're right, Bill. It's like the internet. It's a whole new opportunity for a lot of people. Here we are. I have a book on brewing and beverages, and who knows? Somebody may come up with a really cool new beverage with cannabis, or they may take a little nugget out of that book, like bioplastics or whatever, and just do that. And like I said, I hope to hear someday that one of your viewers made a fortune in the cannabis business, because that would give me reason to be wholly satisfied with writing this book, that it helped at least one person to become filthy rich or to create a medical product that helps people.
There'll definitely be some. It might not be a viewer of ours, but it'll definitely be a few people, I think, that if they read it and they really take it seriously, could run with it.
I think that's a great way to end the segment. August 1st, Brewing with Cannabis will be hitting the shelves. Make sure you pick it up. We'll have all the links in our bio, and we really appreciate you, Dr. Villa, coming on our show and letting us do this interview. I'm pumped up for cannabis now. Bill, we have to have a brain session as soon as this interview's over.
Absolutely. And, we're getting started.
Yeah.
Well, Murph and Bill, it's been my pleasure. And I thought we were only supposed to speak for 30 minutes. Here we've got a long time.
That's the great thing about good ideas and conversation. It just seems to go for a long time. But don't hang up just yet, Dr. Villa. We want to do another segment that we want to record real quick. But like I said, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Cheers.
Bye, everybody. We'll be right back with a game. All right.